shit, Dave.
Everyone who rollerblades knows that it comes with an accepted level of risk. No matter what level you skate at, whether you're beginner, intermediate, or expert, sooner or later, you are gonna take a slam.
Tell me if you think I need stitches.
Let me see. Yeah, you need stitches.
Broken bones are a fairly common occurrence.
Broke ankle. Broken ankle. Bad? Broken.
And depending on how far you're willing to push yourself, trips to A&E end up becoming an inevitability. I know because I've visited A&E more times than I can remember. Falling is such a big part of rollerblading that there was an entire VHS video dedicated to it in the 90s. It was called Red, Black and Blue All Over, and it came free with Hoax 4 Brass Monkeys. I hate seeing people get hurt, especially when I see one of my friends bleeding. It just makes me really anxious and uncomfortable. But one of the things I like about rollerblading is just rollerbladers' resilience, and they're willing to take an absolute beating and keep going, or to just return from significant injury, whether it's broken bones, whether it's traumatic head injuries, and just come back stronger than ever. In this video, I'm going to take a look at 5 skaters who had horrific accidents and came really close to death, but they all came through the other side, they all made full recoveries, all of them continued skating, and some of them even produced their best sections after they were seriously injured. First up is Lyle Shivak. Lyle was a huge part of the Santee crew, and I would argue he was one of the best skaters in that crew. In fact, I would argue that he's better than some of the skaters who went on to have pro skates. He had sections in the Daily Bread video, No One's Children. He had footage in United Front. He had a section in Santee Filth and the Fester Team video. He had an impressive trick vocabulary. He could stomp a big gap. He wasn't afraid of a drop rail or any other stinking terrifying spot. And he was very impressive to watch. In fact, I would argue he was really underrated for his time. He was sponsored by USD and Ground Control and Fester wheels, but he never really got past the amateur stage, and I think that is a shame because he did have a lot to offer. One of his favourite sections that I really enjoyed was a section in the Carl Sturgis video, Demo Day. First off, because I'm a huge fan of Carl Sturgis, particularly Demo Day and Killer Boots, and he just went hurricane-tastic in this video. He did Hurricane Sunny Day, Hurricane Topsoul, he Hurricane Fishbrained El Toro, and he did some big gaps in it as well. He did a 540 down the famous Carlsbad gap. And he also did this massive 180. But Lyle Shivak was also known for taking some brutal slams, which were documented in many of his sections, but none was worse than the slam he took in the Fester Team video. Here he can be seen attempting a triple kink. I think it's in San Diego, but I can't remember for sure, and he basically just falls from the top. He tries to save himself but gets swung round and lands what appears to be on his back or on his chest, and needless to say, he was stretchered away in hospital on a drip, and it just looked utterly horrendous. Interesting bit of trivia, that's also the rail that Carlos Pianowski skated in Fruit Booter. He also slammed on it, but it was significantly lower down and not as bad, and he went on to land the trick. Lyle was not so lucky. He fell from pretty much as high as you can fall off that rail, and even though you're landing in sand, sand is not that soft, and when you're dropping from what looks like 2 stories, that has got to be agony. That must have just knocked the life clean out of him. Not only was it well documented in the Fester Team video, it's also made its way onto so many viral things. It's been shared outside of the sport countless times. I'd go as far as to say it's one of the most famous rollerblading slams of all time, just because of how widely it's been shared. Thankfully, Lyle made a full recovery. If you look on his Instagram, he still skates, and Damian Wilson mentioned him on his recent podcast, saying he's alive and well.
Are you still in contact with like Jimmy and Lyle?
Yeah, Lyle calls me whenever his heart's broken or has some sort of emotional issue.
Okay.
Or he wants to cruise over, from Vegas. He's stuck in Vegas.
I don't think there was ever another Leo Shivak section after this, but according to his Instagram, he is still skating and he looks like he's quite a big fan of art, so it's good to know that he's still doing well. Next on the list is Brandon Mateer. Brandon was a huge part of the KFC crew and had sections in Adam Johnson's videos Never the Same, The Moment, Ascension, Collective Consciousness, and he pretty much had footage in all of the KFC videos, I think. Again, I would argue that Brandon was quite underrated just because of the crew he was in and because the star of their crew was undoubtedly Alex Broskow, and Brandon kind of dressed similar to him, had the same skates, did similar tricks on certain spots. But Brandon was a really good skater, he had incredible rail skills, and he put out a bunch of really good parts during that time, and also featured in a bunch of videos that weren't related to KFC, such as Life Plus, and I think he had footage in a VG as well. Brandon Mateer also had an interesting quirk that Adam Johnson talked about at Winter Clash a few years ago.
Brandon used to punch people when he didn't want to do a trick, and then he'd pretend that he was running away from them. So it's freezing cold and the ice run up, and he punched Steve Jones and soiled that drop rail.
But Brandon suffered an absolutely awful fall while they were in Barcelona filming for the KFC video Zombie Comatose. Here he can be seen going for a disaster royale. He misses his back foot and just gets pitched clean to the back of his head. Blood starts coming out everywhere, including out of his ear, and if you were in that situation, panic would just set in. You're in a foreign country, you don't know where the nearest hospital is, and you've got this traumatic brain injury. Thankfully, they were able to get an ambulance. He was taken to hospital and made a full recovery, and his injury actually basically made the basis for the KFC video Zombie Comatose. Him and Yuri Zapranik both had head injuries, and as a result, they made this kind of zombie theme with them being in the hospital, and the video showcased both of their injuries in quite graphic detail, but this clip ended up doing the rounds all over the place. In fact, it ended up being on MTV Scarred, where I've got a clip here, but the footage is kind of horrendous, but you get the general idea. Other people who appeared on MTV Scarred was Franco Camayo and Alex Broskow. So I don't know if they get paid for this, but I hope they did because it's kind of cringe to look back on. As a result of his injury, Brandon, I think he lost the sense of taste and smell, but he did make a full recovery and continued to appear in videos. I don't think Brandon Mateer had any other sections after Zombie Comatose, but he did keep appearing in a number of videos. He had a couple of clips in the Dead Wheels video, Champagne, and if you look on his Instagram, by the looks of things, he's still skating and he still looks pretty good on skates. Next up is Seba Suverheld. He is from Argentina originally, but kept popping up in America. He had sections in the early Haitian videos, such as Lost Tapes and Reincarnation. He also has a lesser known section called Sunny Side Up, which looks like it was filmed in Florida, and I know John Fromm also had a section in that video. I'm a huge fan of Seba's skating, particularly in Haitian Lost Tapes. The section was just full of bangers, really interesting creative skating, really good use of spots. But Seba also fell victim to a horrendous injury while he was filming in France for Haitian Reincarnation. Here Seba can be seen doing a toe roll and then hill bombing into a street. Dominic Bruce is at the bottom watching for cars, but I just don't think he expected Seba to roll out into the road because it doesn't look like it was entirely necessary, and what happens next is absolutely disturbing. Seba rolls out onto the road, and unfortunately for him, at that exact moment, a huge coach bus comes by and he goes underneath the bus, gets hit by the wheels, and thankfully gets projected out from the bus rather than getting run over by it. But the injuries that he had were truly awful, and he ended up in a French hospital on a morphine drip for several days. This was well documented in the Haitian video, which shows the fall multiple times in graphic detail and shows Seba in the hospital using the morphine drip.
Some morphine on some love.
As someone who's had a skating injury which has resulted in being in the hospital for several days on a morphine drip, I can advise that that is not fun and I would not wish it on anyone. Again, I'm pleased to say Seba made a full recovery and has actually appeared in Haitian videos since then. If you look on his Instagram, recently he conquered a pretty sizable kink rail. And he's just released a huge new section filmed on the streets of Argentina where he just skates a lot of unlikely obstacles, shows how unique and creative he is, and it's just an absolute joy to see him still skating, especially after something like that, because if he just slid under that a little bit further, that bus would have went clean over his midsection and we probably wouldn't have him with us today because those buses are huge, they are heavy. That could have went so much worse in so many ways, and I'm just thankful that he got spat out to the side and didn't go underneath it, because no one wants to see that. As we're halfway through the video, I just want to give a massive shout out to my Patreon supporters. They are shown on the screen now. If you'd like to support my Patreon channel, you can do so for as little as £3 a month. You get sneak peeks at videos, you get photos, you get stuff that's not released on YouTube, and I'd be incredibly grateful. Next up is Dave Lang. Dave Lang is one of my favourite rollerblading personalities of the last 15 years. He's just got so much energy and charisma, and in addition to being a really impressive rollerblader, he just had so much character, and that's what we need in skating. We need characters that make it not just about the sport, it's about the lifestyle, it's about the people, it's about the personalities, and Dave had it all. He was on Rems for years, he skated for Psycho Clothing, and he worked at Woodward. In fact, he lived at Woodward for several years, put out a bunch of edits there, but he really came into his own when he got on SSM. He was doing these mega ramp shows. He was one of the first skaters to really make a name for himself on mega ramp. He's got a really famous edit on YouTube where he does 900s over it, where he grinds a rail on it. And he was one of the first people to really push that aspect of rollerblading, which obviously then Hafi went on to do it and appeared in Nitro Circus, but Dave was one of the pioneers of rollerbladers on the mega ramp. In addition to being an absolute monster on transition, Dave Lang is really good at street skating as well. He's got some great parts online for Rems, for Psycho Clothing. He's got a couple of SSM sections online, but my absolute favourite is the one that he did for Haitian magazine. He skates fast, he does big tricks, he's got some excellent lines in schoolyards. I really like his alley-oop wall ride full cab out. He also does this, I think it's an alley-oop fish brain to hop up fish brain from a parking rail to ledge, which is really sick. He does a huge gap into a massive storm ditch. And this ender is no joke as well. Interestingly, Dave's injury actually came as a result of doing something he's fairly comfortable doing. He hit his head doing a 900 at the AIL in Woodward, which a 900 for Dave Lang is one of his signature tricks. He does it on everything. He does it on any kind of ramp. He does it on the mega ramp. So for him to do it in a jump box at Woodward and hit his head is just a freak accident. He wasn't wearing a helmet, and he ended up going on to win that competition, but later that day, he just said he started feeling horrendous and things just went from bad to worse.
Opened up my eyes and it was just like white. I was blind. A room is completely pitch black, completely dark.
Oh.
And I was just blind, and I was like, fuck, something's wrong. I just started puking, and my head was just it felt like it was about to explode. I was like, fuck, dude, I think something is really wrong. It was the first time I'd ever really been panicked about my health or whatever.
Yeah.
And what's it called? So I called the ambulance on myself.
It's documented in the Mushroom Blading podcast, How to Be Unpopular, which was then the audio was used for his intro for his 666 section.
It's like, man, my head is killing me, and they brought me into an emergency CT scan, and they're like, oh, well, it makes sense that your head would be hurting because you have a subdural hematoma and internal bleeding on your brain. And then they got really serious on me. They got really, really serious on me. They're like, okay, well, you probably, call your loved ones because this is what's going on. And
he also talks about it on Jump Street podcast, where he mentions that the doctors gave him a pretty low chance of survival.
I was in a 20% chance of survival rate at that point. Allegedly, I said to my folks when they got there, and apparently what I said to them was, I was like, I know what you're going to say, but this shit ain't going to stop me from rollerblading.
Thankfully, he went on to make a full recovery, and he actually appeared in FEES events after this. And I'm pretty sure his 666 section had footage from before and after the injury, because in some clips he's not wearing a helmet and in some clips he is, which leads me to believe that that was after the injury. After his injury, he did make a full recovery, but his bad luck continued because he was due to get a pro skate from SSM. In fact, the prototype was even out and people had seen leaked photos of it, but just before it was due to go to manufacturer, SSM decided to shut its doors and the skate was never released. Thankfully, we've got a photo of it here, and on Jump Street podcast, he even shows images of the final product that was due to go into manufacture.
It was the only one that would have had a power strap on there, and had the Dave Lang logo on the back or whatever.
That's sick. That's like a patch.
Yeah. So, dude, the whole reason why I had this like color scheme was because I always wanted the Shima ones, and
oh wow,
I got them. So they're like the whole like gray and the black boot. That was it.
After this, Dave Lang did continue skating, and he actually appeared in the Dave Cameron film Alita, and I'm pretty sure he got other skaters in there as well, like Frankie Morales and other people, and they got paid well out of it. Dave was also briefly sponsored by K2 after this, but the less said about that, the better. I've spoken to several people who visited California in recent years, and they've all said that they've seen Dave Lang. He's still skating, and he apparently still rips, which is great because Dave was one of my favorite skaters to watch, and I'm just happy to know that he's still going.
a dark spot on my brain, for the rest of my life.
Oh my fucking god. Can you fucking believe that shit?
Last on the list, and probably the most famous example, is Billy O'Neill.
This is the introduction to Billy O'Neill.
Billy has been incredible for years. He's had sections in a bunch of East Coast videos. He had footage alongside Dustin Halloran and Boshy Pope in the Razors video Closer. In addition to that, Billy also 180'd the massive Clipper Gap in San Francisco, and it was the ender to his section in the Monks video. But Billy really came into his own in the Razors team video Ego, which was made by Adam Johnson. He just took it to a whole other level, and I genuinely believe he had one of the best sections in that video alongside Julian Ba and Brian Aragon. He killed it. He did huge disasters, big gaps, technical skating, loads of rail to rails, loads of disaster rails. Fun bit of trivia, this Soul 270 Soul that he does in Atlanta, Billy actually landed on his 21st birthday.
The biggest battle I ever had was the one I think in Ego, the Soul 360 top Soul on Soul 360 Soul like down the road Atlanta. Yeah, that was my 21st birthday, and I was like hungover the night before. Or no, was I hungover? No. I was beat up from skating because I had to do this film an Ego part in 2.5 weeks, and I was just skating every day like ridiculous, and I was had the crap beat out of me from the day before. It was like the TTP day or something when I got to TTP that, and he's just like, I know it's your birthday and we're gonna go party, have some drinks, but I just need one trick out of you, just one. So this was the one, and it took me 2 hours.
Another little bit of trivia, the disaster true spin top porn that he does at a school in Atlanta, Adam Johnson tried to convince Brian Aragon to one-up Billy O'Neill. And Billy said that if Brian Aragon did one-up his true spin top porn, he was going to 360 soul it.
The gap to TTP on the rail, Aragon gap to True Savannah in Atlanta. Yeah. Okay. So I get on tour. I have 0 clips. Dre Murda and Aragon have like 60 or 70 clips for Ego, and I have 0, and I have like 2 weeks or something to film, 2.5 weeks, something like that. I saw a clip of Julian gap to top soul that rail, and I was like, oh man, it would be cool to gap to TTP that rail. And Aragon was like, have you been there? It's pretty big. And I was like, I still think I can do it. And he's like, you won't do that. And I was like, I think so. Let's go tomorrow. And he's like, all right, cool. Let's go. So I go right when I'm putting my skates on. Aragon's already gapping to Royale it. I'm like, what? What's going on? So I put my skates on and I just like gapped to fish brain. It was like first trick for some reason, just because I was really competitive or something. I wanted to do a better trick. Kind of came out really ugly as in the intro of the video. And then he's trying gap true Savannah. So then I'm trying to gap to true top hornet. So he lands his gap true Savannah, and then I land my gap true top horn. I don't mean to put AJ on blast, but he pulls Aragon to the side and he's like, yo, gap true Royale it. And then I was like, hey, if you do that, I'm going to 360 soul it. And then Aragon was like, nah, it's cool, man. I'm good, AJ. And I was like, yeah, I'm good too.
Depending on your perspective, it's a good or a bad thing that never happened, because on the good side, Billy could have done the 360 soul and that would have been utterly insane. On the bad side, he could have went for the 360 soul and got absolutely worked, which no one wants to see. After this, Billy had exceptional sections in the Be Unique video, Freestyle Rolling, which just again had huge stunts and really technical skating. But it also showed Billy's creative side, where he started doing like the hurricane slides that were made famous by Robert Leavanos, and doing little spinny things in the street and just experimenting, which I love to see.
I could have been next to fly over the cuckoo's neck. No who with an S tattooed in my chest, but I finessed it. Now I got the industry.
Then there's also the case of this massive gap, which will forever be imprinted on my brain. And of course, everyone remembers his exceptional section in the Mind Game video, Accidental Machines, where again, technical stylish skating. Love this cross grab torque slide, and whether you call it a misty flip or a bio, I don't care, it is absolutely beautiful. But Billy also has one of the most famous slams of all time, and that is when he 180'd into a bank in Barcelona and got hit by a car.
Oh my god. Oh fuck. Dude. Fuck.
This clip first appeared on the conference website, and it was just this. You just saw him getting hit and nothing else, no context. It was filmed by Vinnie Minton, and this exploded. It went everywhere. Everyone was talking about it. It was, you know, during the rower news era where things like that really got a life of their own and got a lot of views. The full raw footage from this incident ended up making its way online, and Dominic Sigona's reaction to what happened pretty much says it all.
This shit is fucking nuts, dude. That was like the worst thing I've ever seen in my life.
Luckily, Billy only sustained a broken ankle, but you can see he falls just before he gets onto the road. If he'd fallen a little bit earlier, he would have went right underneath that car, or if he had tripped and fallen forward and hit the car face first, this would be a completely different matter. He was off his skates for a year, which was documented at the start of his Truth 2 section, where it showed his recovery, and he came back kicking. His section in Truth 2 was unbelievable, had all the stunts that we were used to seeing him doing, all the technical skating, but he also had some interesting moments in there, like rolling down rails and just incorporating new things into his skating, which he'd obviously thought about in his time off, which was brilliant. And it has this monumental 540 at the end, which I'm pretty sure everyone in rollerblading has seen. Also, since that time, I'm pretty sure Billy's been in 2 further incidents involving cars. I think he's been knocked off his bike by a car once, possibly twice. I know that he was back in hospital with another brain injury, but thankfully he has made a full recovery, and since that time he's actually released some of his best sections. He released a Haitian section, well, Haitian SSM section, which many would argue is the best section he's ever put out. He does that incredible disaster at Staples Center. among numerous other wild tricks like this 360 topsoul disaster over the rail. He also put out a VOD with Erod called Duos, which you can see on YouTube now, although I'm not entirely sure it's authorized to be on YouTube, but it's on there. He's also started Mesmer Skates and has some brilliant footage in the first video, Mesmer Rising. And then there's the small matter of this beautiful clip in the latest Mesmer video, RV There Yet? Well, there you have it. 5 utterly horrific incidents on skates. Thankfully, all of them made full recoveries. They all still skate. They're all alive and well. And I think it's a good story about the strength of character of rollerbladers, the fact that we're able to go through these experiences and have these really painful, awful moments, overcome them and continue to skate, or continue to skate in this instance at high levels. And I just think it says a lot about the character of those individuals, and it's really impressive and says a lot about our sport. I'd be interested to hear your comments regarding this video. There are some in there that I think are worse than others. Brandon Mateers would have been absolutely terrifying because he'd have been in a foreign country and just not having a clue what's going on. I feel like if it happens in your home country or in your home city, it's a little bit easier to deal with because you know what form of support is there, whereas if you're in a foreign country like France or Spain or whatever, that takes on a whole different life of its own. Stories that I didn't cover in this is apparently Anthony Potier slit his throat open while rollerblading, and the only reason he's still alive to this day is because they got him to the hospital really quickly. I've tried to get Anthony on the podcast, but he just flat out ignores me, so I will never know if that's really the truth, but a couple of people have told me that story, and if that is true, that is utterly mental. For now though, see you soon.